night is alive. The wind whistles through tall grass, shadows twist beneath the pale glow of the moon, and every rustle feels like an omen. Imagine yourself there. No houses, no locked doors, not even a flashlight. Just the flicker of firelight keeping the darkness at bay. The flames crackle, painting faces in orange and gold, while beyond the circle of light, predators wait, unseen. Eyes glimmer low in the brush, reflecting the fire as though the night itself were staring back. So before you enjoy the story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. The people huddle closer, their breaths shallow. They know the night is not theirs, it belongs to the lion, the hyena, the leopard. To step too far from the fire is to step into an arena where claws and teeth hold every advantage. And yet, they do not cower completely, because these humans, our ancestors, were already learning to bend the odds. The fire is their first trick. It's not just warmth, not just a place to cook meat. It is a wall, a psychological weapon, a glowing declaration that says, "This space is ours." Lions may be bold, but they hesitate when sparks leap and flames hiss. Hyenas circle wide, their laughter echoing, testing the courage of those huddled together. The people keep the fire alive, feeding it branches, bones, even smoldering dung if wood is scarce. The night is long, but so long as the fire burns, they are not entirely helpless. Still, fear lingers. Imagine the tension. Every sound a threat, every shadow a trick of the eye. A branch snaps and every head swivels. Is it wind, a wandering boar, or the heavy paw of something stalking closer? That paranoia may sound exhausting, but it sharpened them. It taught them to listen in stereo, to recognize the subtle difference between grass swayed by the breeze and grass parted by a predator's step. Even now, our brains are wired to jolt awake at noises in the dark, an evolutionary echo of countless nights where attentiveness meant survival. The group clings together. Alone, each person would be easy prey. Together, they form a nervous but resilient unit. The strong grip spears of sharpened wood, their tips hardened in fire. Others tend the flames, while children nestle between bodies, lulled not by safety, but by sheer exhaustion. Even sleep is a gamble. One wrong dream could mean waking to teeth. To manage, they likely slept in shifts, though calling it shifts is a bit generous. Think less orderly security rotation, and more whoever is too anxious to sleep pokes the fire and keeps watch. Yet, even here, humanity shows its spark of creativity. The fire casts more than warmth and light. It casts shadows. To scare off predators, some ancestors may have danced or waved branches, making their silhouettes loom larger than life. To a lion at the edge of camp, that could look less like a fragile human and more like some strange, fiery giant. Intimidation was as valuable as any weapon. And sometimes, fear needed a touch of humor. Imagine a weary group laughing quietly as one man waves a burning branch dramatically, only to set his own hair smoldering. A quick slap, some smoke, and maybe even a lesson learned. Don't try to be the fire spirit while standing too close to the flames. Even in danger, laughter stitched people together, making courage possible when logic screamed otherwise. Historically, evidence suggests that early humans, Homo erectus for example, had mastered fire control by around 1 million years ago. Not everywhere, not perfectly, but enough to tip the scales. Fire didn't just cook food. It cooked fear into predators. And here's a strange little detail. Traces of burned bones found in ancient camps suggest that fire pits may have doubled as garbage disposal. Tossing scraps into flames not only kept the campsite cleaner but also masked scents that might attract prowling hyenas. You could say it was the first form of smell management, centuries before scented candles made their debut. Still, even with fire, survival was a nightly performance. The group had to balance courage and caution. Stray too far into bravado, like chasing a lion with nothing but sticks, and disaster followed. But shrink too much and hunger and cold would claim them instead. The delicate dance of boldness and restraint became the rhythm of their nights. The fire dies a little and the group knows what that means. Shadows grow bolder when the flames shrink. The The predators have patience, they know humans make mistakes. A moment's neglect, a patch of darkness too wide, and the circle of safety collapses. So the people feed the flames again, passing down an unspoken rule. The fire must never die at night. Never. From these nights, huddled at the edge of firelight, humanity learned the habits that still linger in us today. Our love for campfires, our fear of the dark, our stories told beneath the stars. The night was always filled with danger, but danger was also the forge. It pressed humans to be more than prey, to invent, to imagine, to outwit. The crackle of flames, the glint of eyes in the grass, the chorus of laughter and snarls. This was the world in which survival became a story told in embers and shadows. The fire still burns, but no flame can erase the knowledge that the dark hides secrets. Every hiss of grass is a whisper, every breeze a warning. Our ancestors quickly learned that eyes are not the only sense worth trusting, especially when vision falters. The night demanded a different toolkit, one built on ears, noses, and instincts sharper than most city dwellers can imagine today. Consider hearing first. Out there on the savannah, sound carried like gossip in a small town. A hyena's cackle might echo from hundreds of yards away, while the heavy breath of a lion moving downwind could blend with the rustling grass. The humans leaned into this gift, practicing silence so their ears could sort friend from foe. Over time, they noticed patterns. The frantic alarm of birds meant something was prowling beneath the trees, while sudden silence meant every small creature had chosen to freeze at once, a sure sign that danger stalked nearby. Smell too mattered. A modern human might struggle to notice the musk of a predator unless standing nose to fur. But back then, sharper noses could catch the faint tang of cat urine or the metallic hint of blood left from a fresh kill. In a world without Febreze, the olfactory report card of the night could mean the difference between wandering into a feeding lion and staying just outside the danger zone. And then there was intuition, the kind we sometimes dismiss today as just a feeling. But that feeling, that prickling at the back of the neck when silence falls, was honed over millennia. It was the sum of microsounds, tiny scents, shifts in air pressure, and memories of past ambushes. To ignore it was to volunteer for the predator's menu. In short, that sense of unease in the dark apartment hallway? Thank your ancestors. They were the beta testers of human paranoia. Of course, vigilance alone wasn't enough. People organized. One person dozing off was forgivable. The whole group doing it at once was fatal. So they invented a system, informal watches. Not a military drill, not yet, but enough that someone, always someone, was awake, poking embers, whispering warnings, nudging others when eyes began to close. In many ways, this was humanity's first version of teamwork in the night. And teamwork had its quirks. Imagine one fellow nodding off, only to be jolted awake when a companion, accidentally, drops a stick on his lap. Or someone trying to sneak in extra nap time and later being teased the next morning for snoring louder than the lions. Survival was deadly serious, but humor found a way in. After all, laughter in the face of fear is its own kind of weapon. It shrinks the monsters, if only in the mind. Historically, anthropologists believe early hominin groups slept in clusters, not sprawled out. There's even evidence suggesting that different age groups took different roles at night. Young adults kept watch while elders, with their lighter, fragmented sleep, were more likely to wake at the faintest disturbance. Strangely enough, this is still true. Studies on modern tribal groups show that rarely does an entire camp sleep at once. Someone is always awake, a living alarm system built from biology itself. But predators were not stupid. Lions, for example, prefer to hunt at night because their night vision is superb, up to 6 times better than a human's. So, even when humans thought they were vigilant, the cats were already calculating angles of attack. Hyenas, clever in their own right, tested defenses constantly, darting in to snatch scraps or probe for weak spots. That forced humans to become even trickier. Some groups began scattering thorny branches at the perimeter of camps, creating an early alarm system. The crunch of twigs, the snap of thorns, it wasn't exactly high-tech, but it worked like a prehistoric tripwire. Predators stepping on them would give themselves away before reaching the firelight. And once startled, predators sometimes lost their nerve, slinking back into the dark. Yet there was a cost. Nerves stretched thin. Imagine being the unlucky one whose turn to watch came in the hours just before dawn, the darkest time, when the fire sagged and exhaustion hit hardest. Eyelids droop, the fire seems less like a wall and more like a fragile candle, and every shadow grows teeth. Maybe that's why stories started. Someone keeping watch might whisper a tale to keep others awake, turning the night into a theater where imagination was both comfort and warning. The leopard with glowing eyes, one might begin, waits only for those who dare to wander past the fire. It's equal parts bedtime story and survival lecture. And here's an odd detail. Some anthropologists believe that early humans may have even imitated predator calls to confuse or deter them. A bad idea if you get the accent wrong. Imagine trying to mimic a lion's roar but sounding more like a grumpy cow. Still, the very attempt shows creativity, a willingness to step into the predator's role and use fear as a weapon. The night then became a chessboard. Predators moved their pieces with stealth and patience. Humans countered with ears, noses, organized watches, and primitive alarms. The match was rarely fair. One wrong move, and someone could be dragged screaming into the dark. But each night survived was a victory, a lesson folded into memory, passed down around the fire to sharpen the group for the next encounter. And the rhythm of it all, the silence, the alarms, the shifting of watches, the way a group breathed together under the stars, was slowly weaving something else. Culture. A pattern of trust and vigilance, of storytelling and teasing, of working not just as individuals but as a team. That was the hidden prize of outlasting the predators. Not only survival, but the seeds of community. The predators didn't know it, of course. For them, it was a hunt like any other. But for humans, every night endured was rehearsal for something greater. The fire glowed, the ears listened, the smells warned, and the group endured, step by anxious step into the dawn. Dawn eventually breaks, but the lessons of the night never leave. Humans know that fire alone cannot win every battle. Sometimes predators ignore the flames, too hungry or too bold to be frightened away. That's when sharper tools, hotter sparks, and clever tricks become the next line of defense. Picture the moment. A lion edges closer, golden eyes catching the firelight, its muscles rippling with confidence. A spear waits in the hand of a hunter, its tip hardened in flame. That spear is more than wood. It's innovation. Early humans discovered that holding a sharpened stick in the fire until it blackens not only dries it but makes the tip harder and more lethal. One simple step, but it meant the difference between a blunt poke and a wound that sent predators limping away. And fire itself wasn't just for the hearth. People learned to wield it. A burning branch waved at the right moment could send sparks flying into a predator's face. A kind of prehistoric flashlight combined with a taser. Lions, bold as they are, dislike burning embers singeing whiskers. Sometimes humans even carried fire with them, torches that expanded the protective glow beyond the camp circle. Imagine the relief of stepping out into the darkness to relieve yourself while clutching a flaming stick. Not glamorous, but infinitely safer than doing so unarmed. But humans didn't stop with fire and spears. Smoke became another tool. By tossing green leaves, damp wood, or even dung onto the flames, they could produce billowing smoke that masked the scent of meat or kept insects at bay. A smoky camp was less pleasant to sleep in, but it was also less pleasant for predators hoping to track dinner by smell. In a sense, they invented the world's first security fog machine, minus the strobe lights and techno music. Historically, archaeologists have found early evidence of such tactics. Some ancient hearth sites contain layers of ash interspersed with piles of stone, suggesting fires were deliberately tended with materials that produced more smoke than heat. And while it might sound odd to us, dung was a surprisingly common fuel. Not only did it smolder slowly, but it also discouraged animals who didn't find the smell nearly as rustic as humans pretending to enjoy artisanal cheese today. Still, predators weren't easily discouraged. Hyenas, for example, operated in groups, testing the humans just as humans tested them. That gave rise to another leap: traps. Digging pits along common paths, scattering sharp rocks, or arranging logs so that they could roll or collapse created primitive but effective barriers. A careless predator could find itself stumbling, cut, or startled, enough to break the hunt's momentum. These weren't elaborate tiger cages from later civilizations, but they were beginnings, sketches of the trap-making ingenuity that would later shape entire hunting strategies. And sometimes the best defense was offense. Groups began to hunt not just prey animals, but occasionally predators themselves. Killing a lion or leopard wasn't easy. It was a desperate gamble. But when successful, it sent a powerful message. Humans weren't simply scared victims. They could strike back. A single pelt draped in the camp was not just warmth. It was a trophy, a warning to other predators, and perhaps even the birth of symbolic power. We faced the beast, and we won. Of course, the process wasn't without mishaps. Imagine a young hunter, proud of his fire-hardened spear, charging a hyena with all the courage in the world, only for the spear to snap on impact. The hyena probably had a good laugh before retreating, leaving the humans to both sigh in relief and tease their friend for weeks. Failure was part of the process, and the group learned through every blunder. Trial and error might be terrifying at night, but it was also humanity's greatest teacher. And here's a strange twist. In some regions, humans may have deliberately kept predator skulls or bones near camp, not only as trophies but as talismans. Whether they believed these bones scared off living predators or simply served as reminders of hard-won battles, the practice foreshadowed ritual and symbolism. A skull glowing in the firelight could turn fear into focus, an eerie but practical reminder of what happens to those who cross the human circle. But defense wasn't purely physical. Humans mastered coordination. One person with a spear is fragile. 5 people with spears, stepping in unison, shouting, waving fire. Suddenly the hunter becomes the hunted. That kind of group intimidation worked wonders, transforming thin bodies into something larger, louder, more terrifying than any single predator expected. The mob effect wasn't just theater. It was survival strategy. And within that theater, stories grew. Children heard tales of how their people once drove off a hyena pack by waving fire and screaming into the night. They learned that bravery wasn't the absence of fear, but the ability to stand together despite it. In time, those stories hardened into rules, and those rules shaped behavior. Never let the fire die, never stray from the group, and always face the dark with more than one spear. Humor still found its way in. Imagine a storyteller exaggerating the size of a leopard they once chased, claiming it was as big as the moon, while everyone chuckled, half scared and half amused. Or someone tripping over a half-dug trap meant for predators and earning a bruise and a lifetime of jokes. The night was dangerous, yes, but shared laughter kept courage alive. So, as the fire crackled, as smoke drifted upward, as spears lay ready and traps waited in silence, the balance of power began to tilt. Predators still ruled the darkness, but humans no longer trembled at every shadow. They had tools, teamwork, and tricks, simple, messy, ingenious steps that turned survival into strategy. The predators circled, eyes glinting. The humans stood, fire and spear in hand. The contest was no longer predator versus prey. It was predator versus something new, something that could think, invent, and remember. Something that would not just endure the night, but bend it to their will. The night does not end with humans holding their breath around a fire. It evolves. What began as defense sharpens into something bolder, outsmarting the very predators that once stalked them. Instead of waiting to be attacked, people start turning the tables. The hunted becomes the hunter, and the balance of fear begins to tilt. Consider the lion again, patient in the grass, its eyes locked on the fire circle. In earlier days, humans huddled tight, hoping the flames held. But now they have plans. The strongest hold spears, not to wait passively, but to lunge when the moment is right. The cautious place thorny barricades at the rear, making escape harder for anything that dares approach. And then there's the clever one, the one who decides to leave bait. A scrap of meat, just far enough from camp, set like a dare. A predator snatches it, only to be met with shouts, spears, and fire. Surprise! Dinner fights back. Deception becomes a survival tactic. Sometimes groups leave glowing embers at one spot while slipping into the shadows nearby, ambushing predators who think the humans are clustered safely in the light. Other times, they create decoys, bundles of grass or wood shaped like crouched figures at the camp's edge, giving the illusion of more guards than there really are. In the uncertain light of fire and moon, even a clever leopard hesitates at what it cannot confirm. That hesitation buys humans seconds, and seconds can mean life. Strangely enough, anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherers have noticed similar tactics still in use. The San people of southern Africa, for instance, often work in coordinated groups, flushing prey toward ambushes. It isn't hard to imagine their distant ancestors using the same teamwork against lions and hyenas. And here's an odd little fact. Some early groups may have smeared themselves with ash or mud to mask human scent, a trick stolen from the very animals they hunted. Imagine a predator's confusion when the delicious smell of human is suddenly muted beneath a smoky disguise. Predators, of course, adapted too. Hyenas learned to dart in quickly, testing for weaknesses. Leopards climbed trees near camps, waiting for opportunities. But every move sparked a counter-move. Humans began setting secondary fires away from camp, small glowing eyes that created the illusion of a larger group spread across the landscape. Lions are bold, yes, but they also prefer easy meals. Why attack what looks like a forest of fire when easier prey grazes under the stars? And the strategies grew bolder still. Small bands of humans sometimes tracked predators back to their own kills, waiting until the beasts had fed their fill before charging in as a coordinated mob. Hyenas might laugh, but when faced with dozens of shouting, stick-waving, torch-bearing humans, even they scattered. Imagine the drama. Predators dragging down an antelope with effort, only to have scrappy humans appear out of nowhere yelling, "Thanks, we'll take it from here." It was theft, sure, but also survival, and it cemented the reputation of humans as audacious opportunists. That opportunism had another effect. It turned predators into teachers. Watching how lions stalked, how hyenas coordinated, how leopards ambushed, humans began to borrow tactics. They didn't just fend off predators. They studied them. By copying their patience, silence, and cunning, humans learned skills that would later make them formidable hunters themselves. It was like auditing survival school with the syllabus written in paw prints and claw marks. Not every trick worked, of course. One can imagine a failed decoy, maybe a poorly stuffed grass guard that toppled over, sending everyone into nervous laughter, or an overconfident attempt to scare off a predator ending with a retreat back to camp, singed eyebrows included. These mishaps mattered less than the larger truth. Humans were experimenting, adapting, and, most importantly, winning more often than they lost. Humor was woven into it all. Picture a storyteller describing how one man tried to roar like a lion to scare a leopard, only to sound more like a sick goat. The laughter that followed didn't erase the fear, but it transformed it. Fear shared, mocked, and wrapped in story became something less paralyzing and more unifying. The group didn't just survive. They thrived together, weaving failures into legends. And here's the historically accurate kicker. The more predators tested humans, the more those predators began to avoid them. Fossil evidence suggests that over time, large carnivores actually changed their hunting patterns, giving human-occupied zones a wide berth. It wasn't that lions suddenly respected human property rights. It was that humans had become too much trouble. Predators seek easy meals, not torch-waving mobs with pointy sticks. The night, once a one-sided battlefield, was now a game of strategy. Humans lured, tricked, ambushed, and stole. They created a rhythm of outthinking the hunters, turning every encounter into a lesson. Slowly, the predators realized, this prey bites back. And in those moments, when a hyena pack scattered, when a lion turned away, when a leopard abandoned its stalk, humans felt something new. Not just relief, but power. A power born not from size or strength, but from cooperation and cunning. The very qualities that predators forced them to develop became the foundation of their future dominance. The fire burned, the spears gleamed, the decoys waited in the shadows. And for the first time, predators weren't the only hunters in the night. The dawn rises again, but the lessons of the night do not vanish with the shadows. They linger, etched into memory, into habit, into story. What began as raw survival, the desperate attempt to keep predators at bay, slowly transformed into something greater, mastery of the environment and mastery of fear itself. Think of it. Every flicker of fire kept alive, every whispered warning passed in the dark, every daring ambush staged against lions or hyenas. It all became part of a growing body of knowledge. Children absorbed it almost before they could walk. They learned that the night was dangerous, yes, but also that their people had the tools to endure it. Fear was never erased. It remained a vital signal, but it was harnessed, channeled, and shaped into culture. Stories were the first vaults of this knowledge. Around the fire, as sparks spiraled upward into the black, elders retold the victories and close calls of the past. A leopard's near success became a cautionary tale. A clever ruse that scared off hyenas became a lesson in wit. And sometimes, tales stretched into myth. Predators took on voices, personalities, even supernatural qualities. The lion might become a spirit of courage and danger. The hyena, a trickster laughing at its own failures. These myths weren't just entertainment, they were instruction manuals disguised as stories. Strangely, some of these predator-shaped myths still echo today. In African folklore, hyenas often appear as greedy or foolish, reflecting millennia of encounters where they tested camps but rarely triumphed. Lions, on the other hand, became symbols of strength and danger, their nightly presence so consistent that no culture could ignore them. Even now, in bedtime stories, movies, and symbols on flags, the great predators still walk beside us, only now in memory rather than in the brush. But the practical side of this mastery was equally transformative. Humans no longer merely defended against predators, they claimed the night as their own. Firelight became gathering places, where music, dancing, and ritual emerged. What started as a defensive tool turned into a stage for community. A circle of flames was not just a fortress. It was a classroom, a theater, even a proto-church. Every chant or rhythm pounded into the darkness was a statement. We belong here. We are not afraid. Historically, this shift was profound. Archaeological evidence from sites like Wonderwork Cave in South Africa shows that early humans used fire consistently over hundreds of thousands of years, not just for cooking, but as part of their daily rhythm. That consistency transformed the relationship with predators. Slowly, large carnivores ceded ground. Fossil records suggest that over time, their ranges shrank as humans spread. Where once humans were the vulnerable newcomers, now predators were the ones adapting, skirting the edges of human-claimed territory. And here's a peculiar detail. In some traditions, people smeared ash from the fire onto their skin before sleep, kept insects away, but it also masked human scent. Ash, fire's own ghost, became a blanket of safety. In a sense, people weren't just guarded by fire, they wore it. With each innovation, each story, each scar from a close encounter, humans carved out more than survival. They carved out identity. Nights of terror became nights of storytelling. Ambushes turned into strategies. Fear of predators evolved into respect, even reverence. The hyena became a character, the lion a teacher, the leopard a shadow that shaped vigilance. Predators had forced humanity to adapt, and in doing so, had helped forge humanity's greatest strength: cooperation and imagination. And humor never left the circle. Even as myths grew and rituals formed, people still laughed at the absurdities of their nightly battles. The man who once tripped into his own trap became the butt of campfire jokes, immortalized not as a failure but as a reminder that everyone makes mistakes, and lives to laugh if lucky. Humor, perhaps more than any spear, was the weapon that truly turned fear into something manageable. So the night changed. What began as a time of helplessness grew into a theater of resilience. Humans didn't conquer predators by brute strength, they couldn't. Instead, they outlasted them with wit, unity, and relentless curiosity. They learned to study, to mimic, to trick, to plan. And eventually, they learned to master. The predators still roamed, still glimmered in the dark, but the dynamic had shifted forever. Humans were no longer prey, not entirely. They were equals, sometimes even victors. And as the millennia passed, the once hunted species became the hunter that reigned supreme, not just over predators, but over the entire landscape. Yet traces of those nights remain within us. Our unease in the dark, our thrill around campfires, our fascination with stories of monsters in the night. All are echoes of ancestors who stared into glowing eyes beyond the flames and refused to break. From survival to mastery, from trembling prey to storytellers of the stars, early humans outsmarted the predators of the night. And in doing so, they lit the first sparks of what would become humanity's defining flame. The power to imagine, to laugh, and to endure.